about professionalism online. Great. Here are the people we want here.
Well, if we have a smaller group, that makes it even better because we can keep it even more informal and dig deeper.
We're periscoping live video, so some people might also join us.
Does everybody know what Periscope is?
Periscope is it's a Twitter product, right? It's owned by Twitter, and it's just a live video capture app, and you can broadcast live from Periscope anywhere, anytime. I don't think there's any time limits on how long you can Periscope, and when you sign into Periscope, it sends out a tweet to your Twitter community saying one of the people you follow is live right now, you can join in, and if they sign in, their username comes up and that's it, and they can tap on the broadcast to share something that they enjoy, and it pops up a little heart on Periscope so that you know that they're watching and engaged. And then it can also save your broadcast to your camera roll so that you can share it later and hold on to it. So it's being used in all kinds of interesting ways. A lot of musicians are using it to, they'll do just a little sort of acoustic solo show from their living room and get their public audience engaged, and they can also choose for it to not be captured or saved at all, and then it's just kind of like a little private show, and then it goes away. But it's popping up more and more at conferences too, and it's a great way to help engage the people who can't be here.
Welcome. I got 11:01. You want to kick it off?
Sure. Get going. Can you get us started?
I can. Well, welcome. We appreciate you guys coming. It's exciting to present this and to share what we are really excited about, and talking about professional online identities and how it's important for us as in academia and working professionals to take ownership and craft our own professional online identity, but also to spread that message to our students coming through the program so that they can be competitive when they go out for that first job, and their employer puts them in the Google machine. They have a little bit more than what they had for dinner last night, to be the first thing that pops up. So we're going to talk everything about professional online identities today, some of the pitfalls, some of the great opportunities that it presents, and some of the technology behind how to do it. So this is going to be a hands-on, working with each other, fun workshop. So we're going to have a few tasks that we're going to ask you to participate in, but it'll be fun and painless, I promise.
Not completely painless. We're not promising that. You want to tell them who you are?
Yep. So my name is Todd Sage. I'm an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota, and I've been there for about 2 years now, and so I thoroughly enjoy it. And I primarily, when I started, I taught in the graduate program, but primarily I've been teaching in the undergraduate program for the last year, both in our exciting brand new online BSW program. We had our first cohort start last year, and so they're coming for their campus visit this summer, so we finally get to meet face-to-face for the first time, but we've got a great group of BSW online students, and
we know them well because we're using synchronous technology, and we meet together every week, and we use a lot of tech tools to support engagement.
So welcome.
I'm Melanie Sage. I'm the BSW Program Director at the University of North Dakota, and I'm in my 5th year there. And teaching with technology in effective ways is one of my research interests, so we're happy to share this. We're going to cover a lot of things. We're going to talk about tools, we're going to talk about assignments, we're going to talk about social scholarship, We're not going to delve deeply into things like ethical dilemmas in the field. We're going to focus more on crafting positive online identities. So just so you know, we can't do it all today, and we'll do a different presentation on the dilemmas that come with social media. We'll certainly talk about how to avoid getting to dilemma place, though, in this presentation today.
I apologize ahead of time. The projector every now and then just likes to cycle, but it'll come right back up. All right, so our learning objectives, right? Like any good workshop, we need to have learning objectives, and what you hope to have you take away from today. We want to identify the benefits of taking control of your professional online identity, because we're really talking about taking control. Because whether you like it or not, it's out there, and so it's your choice on whether or not you take control of what people find when they search for you.
So we're going to talk about what that means for you as scholars, and also what it means for you in the classroom. And this is a device-friendly session, so if you'd like to tweet or take pictures of slides, feel free. We'll also give you a resource to download slides if you want to do that, if you want to send something to your colleague at home. All this content is open to share. So we're going to start with a question about engagement, about what you already teach your students about that first client contact that they have, and what that first meeting is about when they go out and the new social worker or social work intern meets their client for the very first time. What are you already teaching them about how they should present themselves and what they should do?
So I like to tell my students, this is the interactive part of class. Yes, ma'am.
The importance of listening.
What else?
Present yourself in a professional manner, where you're the worker and the client.
What else?
This is not about trying to fix anything yet, just engagement, just saying hello and getting to know people.
Rapport building. I'm huge on rapport building. I think that's our #1 job in social work.
So that first meeting is all about getting to know each other, developing a relationship, them knowing who you are and where you come from, right? And you showing that you're a professional, but you're also speaking their language and that you're there to offer support. There are all kinds of messages that you're trying to tell people during that first time that you meet with them, right? Very important. But that first moment of engagement, very often for us as professors and for clinical social workers or people who work at agencies, no longer happens in the face-to-face environment. That first point of engagement is when the person gets their appointment card with your name on it and they go to the internet to find out who you are and what you're about, right? So if we think about it theoretically in those terms, that we're actually, the engagement process has moved back to a point where it's not an interactive process anymore. Only the client has control on their end of what they take in about you when they do that search. Then you have a real responsibility to make sure that the things that they're taking in about who you are and how you're going to work with them, and all those questions that you would typically answer during that first meet are out there for people to find in such a way that says, yes, I am approachable and here for you, and I have some specializations, there are some things that I know, here are my credentials, and that's where those conversations start before that.
And a good example of this comes from the medical community. Research shows that 60% of patients will do some form of internet research on their provider before they go see a provider. And so here's somebody that has some form of ailment, that is in some form of discomfort, but is still pausing to take the time to find out a little bit more about that professional. And the same is true for us.
So, and we go like, is that really happening? Some people say, I don't want anything out there on the internet about me because I want it to happen in the face-to-face environment. So what happens then? What happens when somebody Googles your name and you've done really well to protect your identity so that there's nothing about you on the internet?
about the content that other people have posted about you.
Right, there's that. Anybody have a profile that maybe they had no control of on Rate My Professor? Yeah, we'll talk about that in a few more minutes. Maybe they find somebody with your name, the Melanie Sage, who is an agricultural specialist in South Dakota, lives pretty close to me, but she is not me, and I don't want people to think that she is me, right? So this is not only about branding and marketing yourself, which we used to think about like, well, we create a website to share our practice. This is also about ethical issues around making sure that people get realistic expectations of who you are when they make that first search. And they're making the searches. And you know that because you do it too, right?
So how do you find, and we already shared the research about that, but for those in the room, how do you guys go about finding a new doctor when you move to a new community or you have a new ailment? Is it word of mouth? Is it the internet? What are some ways that you guys are doing that? Yes?
I check upgrades, and actually people post their opinions of healthcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Angie's List, absolutely, right? So crowdsourcing the opinion. And how many of you came to the conference and have used the internet to find the restaurant you want to go eat at? Right?
We went to the best rated Yelp Mexican restaurant within walking distance. It's Mayo.
Mio Tio.
Tio Mayo. I think. Check the Yelp reviews, you'll find it. It's very good. So you're doing it, your students are doing it when they choose classes, and we kind of want to go like Rate My Professor, a bunch of garbage. People post there when they're at the extremes, right? When they love somebody or they hate somebody. It doesn't represent my teaching practice. Well, how do you represent your teaching practice when that's the only thing they have to go to? I'm a mother of a recent college graduate, and when I helped him pick his classes, especially those big seminar classes where somebody had 100 Rate My Professor reviews, we went and looked at them, and I said, do you think this person is going to be a good match for you? So even though as a professor, I know it's not the preferred way for me to get an idea about who I am as a teacher, I understand the value of that as a resource. So we're going to do a quick exercise in thinking through. If you've got a pen and paper, which is great because we're going to give a lot of information today that's not on the slides, or tech tool, however you take notes, jot down like maybe 2 or 3 things that you would like your colleagues to know about you. 2 or 3 things that you would like your students to know about you. And if you're a practitioner or if you have a student who wants to be a practitioner, 2 or 3 things that you think that you might want those people to know about who you are. Okay, so you've got that. Now we're going to ask you to do something scary. We want you to pair with somebody in the room real quick, so find a partner, look at each other's name badges, pull out your smartphone, and spend 3 minutes finding out everything you can about that person based only on what you know from their name badges.
So those of you that came late may get that free warning. We're going to have an interactive session. And if we have an odd number, I will volunteer myself. If you need somebody to look up. Oh, excellent. We also have a great student in here that can volunteer. You need somebody to look up.
I'm not sure as far as.
I mean, the initials?
No.
So no talking about what you find yet, just do your searches.
So you get a search for me. So Todd said.
Yeah.
Just Todd said. Just Google the name. And see what you can learn about your neighbor.
And I am going to email you those to the other training too. I have some questions about what you're doing in your English class.
Oh, excellent. might be a good thing or bad thing. And that's actually I'm not following our own rules because we're going to talk about imaging, and so I'm a good example of kind of what not to do.
So 1 more minute of background check on your neighbor, and then you're going to tell them what you found. Yeah, you Google their names, search their names, their school, whatever you want to.
What's going on?
I really appreciate it.
What year are you in? What kind of practice do you want to have?
Macro.
Okay, now spend about 2 minutes telling your partner what you found out about them, what you know about them based on your search.
So you're at the Michigan State University. I used pictures of you. You're a professor, and you look at that. What I thought was most interesting about the Michigan codes there, you're in a perfect class, so some of the neurons somehow find it off. Yeah, so you're in clinical practice, I knew that. And you are also part of the website Language Association. So, and you're also on the side of the Christian Child So you said you're involved in your campus, University of Selfsearch. Is that
Any more?
Exchange if you haven't yet. So let the other person have a turn if they haven't yet. One more minute, then we're going to come back together.
I got to your academic
All right, let's come back together. This is a super speedy exercise, right? Just a 3-minute search, something that you could use in the classroom. You can have the students do it with each other so that you don't have to search the students to tell them what their internet looks like. So tell me now, what surprised you about that search and conversation?
Who wants to share? You. Yes.
Well, it was amazing how quickly I found information about Joan and where her office is, her phone number, her interests. It was fun. Great pictures of her online. But yeah, it was fun. And it just like in seconds.
Yeah. What else?
I think it's scary. There's always information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever wants it.
Right. So there's phone book information might come up, ancestry information, or all kinds of things, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What else did you notice about this search?
Well, those whole life story, like everything, all of it came up. The children, everything.
What are some highlights of his life story?
That he and his wife were both college graduates.
Okay. So you found spousal information, you said children information?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about how this matches this quick list that you made about what you want people to know about you. Good match, bad match?
So can we use Doug as an example? What would you like to be the first thing that pops up for somebody that searches you?
Actually, I'm glad that she found as my introduction Prezi for my online students. So it's all the stuff that I've already built there.
Excellent.
So yeah, work related, but every once in a while on that Prezi stuff, we don't realize that Prezi rates high in a Google search, so that comes up high. And if you, maybe that doc student presentation or job talk that you did on Prezi, you don't want people to find as soon as they search for you, right? So sometimes that means removing content or going back and changing settings. So the self-search is important to control your identity. What about others of you? Was there a strong match between what you want people to know and what they found out?
I would think Barbara would be, I mean, I found out, sort of, we know each other, but her CSW background, her NASW background, all her professional stuff, the first thing that popped up.
So very strong professional organizational things, because those are websites that rank high in the search engines because they get a lot of visitors and because her name is mentioned frequently in those pages. So those are some of the things that control where your content comes up in the search. There's an algorithm that includes the search terms used and the popularity of the website. So if there's information that you don't want up there, it's probably because it's a well-visited site like the phone book or Rate My Professor. That means that you have to build your profile at other well-visited sites like LinkedIn or Twitter or your own personal blog, things that are going to have high matches and that naturally have a lot of high visitors. And those things will bump down the items that you don't want people to see and bump up the content about who you are that you do want people to see. So we talked a lot about our professional stuff came up. That's good. But I at least want students to know more about me if they're searching for me and trying to decide whether to take my class. I want them to know more than what CSWE committees I'm on or BPD committees. I want them to know something about my teaching approach, my research interests, what excites me about my profession. So those are the kinds of things that I include in my static profile pages. And then I also want them to know that I'm approachable and I'm a real person and I like to engage with my colleagues across the nation. So I also make sure that I do some authentic sharing of self. That's a little scarier for us in the online environment because we're not sure about how much to share, right? So we're going to talk a little more about that today.
Hi. Do you guys have someone signing off on continuing education credits?
We do.
Okay, perfect.
Gentlemen's up front.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Have a good day.
So,
Good question.
My concern is not so much what I put up there. My concern is what other people put up there, such as family members who are, in my opinion, constantly on Facebook and posting things on Facebook, of which I am in the pictures and I am
exactly, yeah.
And posting things about my life that is nobody's business that pop up when you hit Facebook.
And some of those things are hard to control. If somebody else is posting that, and if it's not a relationship where you can say, please don't do that, then really some of that is out of your control, and that's what the kind of scary Wild West part of the internet is. But this part of it about like, well, you have to tell your story so somebody else doesn't, is about you getting on and putting the content that you do want people to see, so, because your content is going to raise higher than somebody else's brief mention of you in some story or picture, if you do a good job of using some of the rules that we talked about posting at a high traffic site and using the keywords that people are looking for when they're looking for you.
So there's always got to be the carrot, right? We always want to know, those of you that are coming to technology, kicking and screaming and saying, no, I don't want to do this. So are there benefits to it? And there are benefits. There's documented benefits. An example of this is if you post your research to Academia EDU, you're 60% more likely to get citation boosts, right? And they compared that to static journals versus open access journals. And if you share your research on sites like this, you're going to get a higher impact factor because people are going to see your research, they're going to find your research, and they're going to cite you. And so that's pretty exciting, right? We spend all this time and energy developing our research, and we want people to see it and consume it and recite it.
This was a large study. Was it like an N of 30,000 or something?
37,000.
So they looked at 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year citations on 30,000 papers that were similarly topicked in either academia.edu or static journal. And they found after 3 years about a 69% citation gain for these people who are sharing in these kinds of forums. So it's a place for scholars to connect.
And more importantly, one of our main jobs as academics is dissemination of this great information that we gather and we write about, right? And we know that the end users working at the Child Welfare Office probably don't have access to the university library to go to the scholarly peer-reviewed journal to find your piece of information talking about the latest and greatest in social work practice. And so by putting yourself out there on open access journal sites, you provide the opportunity for that rich dissemination. That really should be the end goal for all our research. I mean, we want to be cited, we want to get high impact journals, and we want that 10-year promotion. But at the end of the day, our goal should be to change practice. And the way we change practice is by putting the information out there in places that are readily consumable, such as Academia EDU.
So when I was coming up through my PhD program, an important dissemination tool was like a white paper alongside the paper, right? A short brief that was easily accessible by maybe an agency that explained in plain language what my research did. But now, what I do when I write a research paper is I summarize it in an infographic. What are the main points? Who is interested in this topic? Who was studied? There are all kinds of infographic creation tools, and they're really easy to use. And for instance, I shared a infographic about the use of social media by child welfare workers. I also wrote a paper about it. The paper, because I share it on social media and I'm active in peer networks, has had more views than most people in that same journal issue. So an average number of views in that journal would be about 40, and my paper probably had about 160 views. My infographic was shared 3,000 times on social media. So if I'm talking about the biggest impact for sharing information about my research findings, it's obvious that one method is more powerful than the other, right? And I'm a pracademic. I really want my work to influence practice. So if I'm going to get it into the hands of caseworkers and clients, then I want to use unconventional tools for sharing scholarship. There are some audiences that are much easier to reach via social media. Think about like the client who is HIV positive in a rural community. They're going to go to those kinds of networks, and a lot of scholars are finding that it's much easier to do research with those communities via social media kinds of channels versus trying to go into an agency and meet with the clients. So the third thing that I'm going to mention is that there are amazing collaboration opportunities that come out of social media use. There's a strong Twitter social work community, but on Twitter, a lot of people share around common interests. So for instance, right now there's a suicide conference going on in Chicago, and there's a community of people on Twitter who are interested in suicide, and those people include psychologists, doctors, social workers, and people who identify themselves as survivors or people who have been impacted by suicide. And they're all communicating together about this issue. So talk about consumer-informed practice, involving all the stakeholders in the practice. All these people are coming together at this conference. They have a very organized social media team at the conference that shares and disseminates information, and there are many interdisciplinary partnerships, and we know that's where social work is headed, right? Thinking more about interdisciplinary collaboration and how we benefit from each other's learning and knowledge. So that's one example of how to come together around a shared interest. I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to tell you a quick story. How many of you were in our session this morning, our tech committee session? Anybody? A couple of you. So you know the long version of the story. I'm going to tell you the short version of the story with a fun video. So Laurel and I met via Twitter about 3 years ago or so, and we were connected through our social work tech community, and then we met up at social work tech meetings at conferences, and then we decided we were going to write this book together about the use of technology in social work, from on the ground to distance learning and best practices for using technology, along with our great co-author Nancy Smith, who's up at the University of Buffalo. So out of this social media relationship came a real life relationship, an important collaboration. We're presenting sessions at conferences together. We're working on articles together. We've got 2 books planned now. And so some people get the idea that Twitter is really about self-promotion, or it's about kind of only sharing research. We want to give a real life example that this is also about effective collaboration, and it's about doing it in a fun, engaging way. So I'm going to show you our CSW Press promotional video. I think this was like take 21.
I'm Laurel Hitchcock. I'm Melanie Sage. And I'm Nancy Smith. And we're here to tell you about our exciting new book, Teaching Social Work with Digital Technology.
Now that may not sound real exciting to most people, but I tell you, we tried to write the book that we wanted to have to read to guide us through what we've done, and we are having a great time with it.
This book is going to be chock full of practical information, how-to tips, case studies, and even example assignments that you can use in your own courses.
We have a whole appendix of assignments submitted from educators all over the U.S. about how to integrate technology in social work education.
And we're not just emphasizing the technology, we're really trying to talk about the principles to design your assignments and to really understand how you can take your assignments to a whole new level. Everything from integrating in the classroom to a fully online degree.
Some people have really challenged the quality of online social work programs and education, and we're really responding to some of those challenges and questions and using theory and research to back up what can go well in online teaching and social work.
Absolutely, using current pedagogy, learning theory, but we're writing the book that we wanted to have 5 years ago when we were getting into technology. That's what we're writing for you.
Exactly.
We have a whole...
I've lost it. Okay, we're done.
So it look like we're having a good time. I think we have a 2-hour laugh reel probably over at CSWE. So one of our challenges about whether or not it's okay to use the online tools, the internet, virtual practice is, you can't really develop relationships online, right? That it's always going to be superficial and unknown. You can't engage. These are some of the things that come up around challenges. And as you can see, we do engage, we do know each other. We meet every 2 weeks by video to talk about the steps and stages of our books. We're really excited about it. It's coming along great. We've got tons of collaborators. We've used lots of technology tools to get this done because we're in New York, Alabama, and North Dakota. I mentioned this earlier today, but Nancy Smith she's a dean with many years of practice and tenure, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota. It's not a natural collaboration. It came around via shared interests, and it became a very powerful tool for us. So we're going to talk about a few tips for crafting professional identity, and then we're going to talk more about tips for teaching professional use of social media. I mentioned before that there are two basic things that you want to know about online identity. One is about telling people who you are. One is about social connections. And you can do one without the other. Maybe you decide that you're not ready to jump into the kind of social media world and connect with colleagues around those kinds of channels, and that's okay. That doesn't remove the fact that you want to give people a message about who you are, and that your students want to give their future clients a message about who they are that's consistent with a professional presentation. So those static sites are things like the LinkedIn. If you use a blog like WordPress or Blogger to just put this basic information up, that will rank pretty high because a lot of people go to blogspot.com, and that helps boost where you fall when somebody searches for your name. And it's easily editable. You don't need any HTML or those things like you used to have to know. It's kind of type and click, save. It's really easy to use. If you want some tips or want to see somebody else walk through it, there are tons of how-to videos on YouTube. So this is just real basic information. It's not a CV because you want it to be brief, that somebody can take a quick look when they're on their way to their appointment or their faculty meeting with you and get a sort of a glimpse of who you are. And your school's website is a great place to do that if there's an easy-to-use profile page there. How many of you have an easy-to-use edit faculty profile page? Barbara. And you might have some power over there. So lots of us don't, right? Like you submit it to somebody, maybe you know who that person is, or maybe you don't, maybe they'll update it. The CV at my school webpage is 2 years out of date, and if somebody searches my name along with my school, UND, it comes with this static, like, here is her phone number page, and that's about it. And that's not what I want people to know about the work I do at the University of North Dakota. We're in a pretty rural state, and we do a lot of practice-based research. I do a lot of evaluation work. Like I said, I'm really interested in transfer of research to practice. So I want community organizations to know what kind of evaluation research I'm available to consult with. I want that to be easy to find. So all that goes into my LinkedIn page because that's one of the first things that's going to come up when somebody does a search for me. You can actually add quite a bit to LinkedIn. So I have some examples I have some newspaper clippings of it, my LinkedIn profile of awards and honors and things like that, and service projects that I've been involved in. So you can be as simple as you want with that. Almost everybody has started a LinkedIn account at some point and then kind of left it there. So that means when somebody searches for you, maybe they find the job that you put in when you signed up 5 years ago. Maybe that's not your job anymore. And that's an ethical issue too, right? Because you want to represent yourself accurately. So don't go out and build a profile on 20 pages. If you're going to do LinkedIn, do it and fill it out well and keep it up to date when you change jobs or ranks. For instance, we had somebody somebody in our community who was a social work professional who was fired from the agency but never took that employment off their LinkedIn account. So anybody who went and searched for them would assume that they were still with that agency. And I contacted that student and former student and told them that they had to represent themselves accurately and update the page to reflect that they no longer worked at that agency.
So some other quick tips related to this is you always want to use your first and last name in all your profiles because you want people to be able to search for you and find you, right? We don't want to find the other Todd Sage or the other Todd. We don't want people to have to guess. A good example, I can use myself as an example. What did you find when you searched for me as far as imagery?
Oh, you have a lot of different ones.
So I got lots of different looks. So I got cleanup to do on my online identity. And so this presentation kind of got me going through what's out there on me. And so she found out I have labs, right? I'm a dog lover, right? And that could be a great thing, but it can also be a bad thing. You talked about some of the negative effects. When I was working child welfare, I actually had a client send me a picture of a dead dog because my online identity showed I'm a dog lover, right? And so if you want to get to your social worker and get under their skin, pick on something that they obviously love, right? And so it's important that if we're trying to set that professional persona, that we're using professional pictures, whether it's the ones we get at the university or somewhere else, that wherever they go, the image we want to portray is the image they find, right? And so I have some professional social media, I have some semi-professional social media, and the semi-professional pulls up with a picture of my lab. And is that the image I really want to put out there, right? So I got some cleaning up on my own to do, so I can use myself as an example.
So part of the great social network that exists out there is the opportunity for crowdsourcing. And when I was preparing for this presentation, I asked some of my online social work faculty community, like, help me out here, give us a tip. So I've got some embedded tips from some social work professors who use social media, and I'm going to share some of those, but I'll take your question first.
I have a question because I have a common name. And so when you search, it's like always like my name's Mary Daly, and it's not.
Right, exactly. So people will probably search Mary Daly Social Work or with your school name, and that will get them a little closer. But I also, like I said earlier, I don't want people to be confused about who they find when they search for me. And when I was working as a clinician, let's just say if I wanted to go see a therapist, I might search for them, and if I know what they look like and know something about their areas, I feel a little calmer when I walk in the door, right? So some people have told me, well, my name's so common, I don't have to worry about it. People are gonna see all kinds and my stuff won't come up, and that's fine for me. But I say, take charge of who you are, so people have a realistic opinion of what you're about and what your story is, and somebody on Rate My Professor isn't crafting that for you.
I would say you actually got to work harder to get above all the noise, so that what you want to pop up
Hi,
is what
I'm Brendan, and I'm here to talk about that little box that's on everybody's social media page, the profile picture. This is important when managing your personal brand and managing your social media presence. It's especially important to me right now because I am applying for lots of jobs, and typically my profile pictures have looked like this. Okay, not too bad, not too crazy, and I am in the field of social work, so we typically think that a person should be judged on the content of their character, their actions, the things they say, not necessarily on whether or not they had a scraggly beard or they were wearing a wizard shirt. However, I live in the real world, and I realize my prospective employers might Google my name, my YouTube channel might come up, my Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn profile might come up, and I want them to see a person that looks professional, someone they can work with. This is just the world we live in today. So, I would recommend you change yours like I did, change your profile pictures to something more professional, something buttoned up. I will stay buttoned up, and I wish you good luck in the future.
So one of the things that we talk about is having a consistent online identity. It's good to use the same or similar picture on your professional pages, so people aren't going, wait, what, is that the same person? Or that your research interests are reflected accurately between your social work faculty page and your LinkedIn page. It starts to develop a picture of who you are and what you're about, right? So at the conferences, I often do technology, social media related presentations. So people go, oh, Melanie, you're the tech person, and that's part of my identity because there's some consistent messaging. Where are you at?
You got to hear what
So, this last slide mentioned a disclaimer at the end. If you go on Twitter and look at academic profiles, you'll often see something that's in the little brief profile that says, opinions are my own. which basically means I'm not speaking for my university, I'm not speaking for my department. This is the place where I'm showing that I'm a real person and I might express ideas that are controversial or not in line with the university president's message about the school. Just like if you submitted an editorial to a journal, right? You're going to express opinions that aren't necessarily your department's, but we make that known on Twitter. And that's a place where we consider our professional identity and branding along the same ways that we think about how the code of ethics influences who we are in public spheres and how we perform for public audiences. But we also say this is what I'm about. Does anybody do Twitter or use social media for their departments? Do your departments have those kinds of networks? Okay.
So you're going to be responsible for it? No. So one yes, one no?
So it's become an important outreach tool. My university is really slow to edit department web pages too, so part of the joy that we get about branding our university department ourselves is not having to wait for the web developer to update our department web pages. When students or prospective students search for what it means to be a social work student at UND and they just come across our web page, it's going to say things like 60 credits and full or part-time, and that doesn't tell them very much at all about what the social work program is like. But we have this great department Twitter page where we all run around and take pictures of things to celebrate in our department. So it's created this great kind of strengths-based framework. So this is the way we did it. I started the Twitter page, consulted with our university about their identification and branding rules for departments that start their Twitter page, and your university probably has somebody who's a point person for those kinds of things. And they said things like, oh, you have to use this kind of picture as your main profile picture. And we followed their rules. And I said, okay, I'll do the department tweets until we have 100 followers, 100 people who are reading our feed. And then I'm going to hand it off to somebody. And so I trained the next person who took it over, who was our department chair. She said, okay, I can do this. I want to learn how. And I taught her. She was the main tweeter. Her job was to tweet 3 times a week. And she said, I'll hold on to it till we get to 150 followers. So she had some motivation to share across networks to get up to that number, because how long she had to be responsible for this is in part based on that, right? So, and then her job was to train the next person. And as our faculty become trained in using this tool, the backup people who are trained in it already continue tweeting now and then. Like I'm the Twitter user from our department who's here at this conference, so I'm going to share department news related to the conference through our profile, because my other colleagues that tweet aren't here. But the unexpected joy is that we're all running around going like, what's something great happening in our department right now that I can share out on our social network? So we have like 400 followers right now, and that's about, it's about community engagement. The local education newspaper journalist follows our Twitter account. It's about engagement with other departments and our university. When we add the hashtag MyUND, then it goes to the university's social media webpage. The university will pick up and retweet something if it's exciting news, and it's a way for us to develop our presence in the bigger system there. And nationally, we connect with other schools who are tweeting for their departments, and they share our news. So one of the big successes is that we have a child welfare grant workforce initiative, and through our Twitter account, a journalist picked up news about what one of our students was doing out in a rural area. She wrote a newspaper article that the AP picked up. A big child welfare organization retweeted it. It was in the NASW news briefs that came out by email. So all this is because we're celebrating something good happening.
So our rural social worker working up just under the Canadian border in what can be described as the middle of nowhere, but national, just because of social media. It was awesome.
So if you're just thinking about whether you want to dip your toes in this, my advice is don't do it all. But here are some places where you can get connected. You can do Twitter and engage around a specific interest. You can join us in the social work technology community and Google+. Some social workers connect on Facebook or on other groups. And I'm going to share Jimmy's tip for how to present yourself in these kinds of communities.
I'm Dr. Jimmy Young from California State University.
Can you hear okay in the back?
Check the volume on your laptop because it was a lot louder earlier.
I don't think I can do that without listening out. This is Jimmy at California State University, San Marcos.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jimmy Young from California State University, San Marcos. When you're thinking about developing your own web presence or using social media online, there's many things that you should probably consider, but I think the most important one is to simply be yourself. Authenticity goes a long ways online, and people can often tell when you're being distrustful or misleading. Social media oftentimes gets a bad rap for these types of things, or when people just use it for blatant self-promotion, or simply just thinking that social media is a waste of time. But really, social media has changed the ways in which we connect with one another, radically altered the way that we communicate, and it's so easy now to share information and resources, these types of things that can impact your teaching or even your research. So remember when you're engaging in these online social networks to just be yourself, because authenticity is always good. Thanks.
So once you start using a tool like Twitter, it feels uncomfortable at first. You don't know what to post or who to connect with or how to find people. You post a short little message and you don't know who sees it or where it goes. And it was like that for me when I started. And so I encourage you to kind of stick with it, watch for a while, or choose one thing to get engaged in, like a Twitter chat. And then there are all kinds of tools that can help you manage these sites too, that make it easier to use. For instance, the first time I tried to participate in the macro social work chat that's hosted every week now.
Every week, every Thursday.
Every Thursday night, a bunch of macro social workers and social work students get together nationally and talk about macro social work issues. It's really hard to follow if you're just reading it through Twitter, but if you go to that T-Chat site and put in the hashtag for macro SW, it makes it in a real easy to use feed, and it makes it much easier to follow and participate in the chat. Storify is a digital tool that can be used to gather a bunch of tweets together around a subject, and some faculty are having students storify tweets related to a certain issue. Maybe it's about a new legislation that's passed or the last presidential debate, and they can basically build a list of inserted tweets from politicians, from viewers and other people, anybody who tweets about the subject. They curate that list of important information that's come out over Twitter and save it as a Storify, and then they can share the Storify with people on Twitter or with you as the instructor. So you can see that they've figured out sort of what's on the cutting edge conversations about what's going on. One great example of this is that there's a lot of citizen journalism going on Twitter. If you're following like Black Lives Matter issues and you're watching it over national broadcast news, there's a whole different story about it going on from people who are on the ground in the city. And you can go, you can send a student out to go find citizen journalism from people who are based in that community and have them curate a list of tweets from people in the community. And that speaks to social work values about consumer-informed information, right? So lots of opportunities out here. Hootsuite is a tool for scheduling your tweets. So I'll fess up. I presented at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm always like sort of last minute, getting ready to get out the door. And I knew that I wasn't going to stop and tweet, like come to my presentation at 7:30 this morning. So I went to my Hootsuite account. It's a free account last night where you can schedule a future tweet. And my tweet said, "I'm on my way to my presentation. Come join us." And I actually said that last night at 11 o'clock before I went to bed, and Hootsuite tweeted it out for me at 7:30 this morning along with the location of the room. So Hootsuite lets you schedule tweets. It's good practice to tweet 3 times a week at least if you're trying to keep an active profile on Twitter. But a lot of people mostly tweet around conferences, and that's a great place to do it. So Laurel, who's sitting with us here, is going to share a little bit about
Hi everybody, my name is Laurel Hitchcock. I teach social work at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Go Blazers! At the request of my good friend and colleague Melanie Sage, I'm creating this video to share with you my best social media tip ever. My best social media tip ever is to pre-plan and schedule your social media posts, especially if you use social media for professional reasons. So if you're like me, you're constantly reading things on the internet, maybe an article from social work literature, a blog post, or a newspaper article that you want to share with your colleagues or your students. And you might want to tweet this, pin it on Pinterest, put it on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat, but you get the idea. I use Twitter. But when I'm reading something, I don't always have time to tweet it out right then and there. So what I do is I save the content, and then once a week I use a social media management app to schedule and plan out my tweets. There are several that you can use. There's Buffer, Hootsuite, and If This, Then That. I use Hootsuite, and once a week, usually on a Friday for about 20 minutes, I sit down with all the content I've saved over the week, and then I create my tweets in Hootsuite, and then I can schedule and the time and the date of my tweets. And Hootsuite will send out those tweets at that specific time and date. It does all the work for me. So then all I have to do over the coming week is sit back, relax, drink a cup of coffee, and wait for all the likes and the retweets to happen. That's my best social media tip ever. I'm looking forward to hearing all about yours as well. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
So this is a good place to talk about a few Twitter tips. So Twitter, you're allowed 160 characters.
140.
140, sorry. But in your profile, you're allowed 160. And so typically we want to keep our tweets as short as possible, except for our profile. And why do we want to keep our profile as long as we can? What are we trying to relay in our profile? We're trying to relay who we are, our professional image.
And 160 letters.
Yeah, and 160 letters. And so that would be an example where you don't want to keep it short and sweet. You really want to promote yourself. You really want to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. Come follow me. Another important tip for Twitter is the 80-20 rule, all right? You don't want to be on Twitter 100% of the time promoting yourself, all right? You want to have a natural conversation. And so you should be 80% conversation, 20% self-promotion. Hey, here's my latest research. Hey, here's the class I'm teaching this semester. And then the rest of the time you should be engaging in the conversation with the broader community.
Replying to what you think about somebody else's research, or tweeting to a politician, tell me more about this policy you're proposing, or I'm against it because Twitter has made me a much better editor. I type something out and it's 160 characters and I have to figure out what words can go and still get my message across. So there are a lot of good practices for using Twitter. You can do a search of that and just say like best practices for Twitter. You'll come up with lots of rules about hashtagging and things like that.
Another real quick good rule is don't bury your lead, right? So don't put your clickable link at the start of your tweet, because what are people going to do? They're going to click the link, and they may never read what you had to say about what you posted. So always put your message in front of the link.
My most active Twitter talk is during conferences because for a lot of reasons. One, this is a great place to connect virtually and in the real world. We don't often get to do that. Usually it's one or the other. So here I connect with the people that I've been friends with all year on Twitter, and now we're meeting face to face and talking about collaborations. So that's one reason. Another reason is, you know how long it takes for these conference presentations to get to scholarship, and sometimes they never do. So I want to share best practices, what's going on in the ground, what people are doing in the classroom, and I can do that using Twitter and share it with all those people who don't have the conference budget to be here. So lots of good reasons for tweeting during conferences. I also want to know, like, I'm trying to decide what presentation to go to. If there's somebody on Twitter tweeting about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, that might encourage me to go to one or over the other. So, like I said earlier, some conferences have gotten super organized about how they do this. They have social media teams. My social media team is right here at friends, Laurel and Avery. And Laurel's tweeting out what's happening. And how many people do we have on Periscope?
We just had 5. Now
So we've got several people who are watching and participating here, and like I said, we develop relationships like this. How many of you listen to the Social Work Podcast? So Social Work Podcast has a huge audience. Jonathan Singer hosts that. He has about 8,000 Twitter followers. So that means that if you retweet something that you've shared, it's going out to a big audience. And so Jonathan's got some tips for tweeting at conference here. And he has a lot of thoughts to say.
My name is Jonathan Singer. I'm an associate professor at Loyola University in Chicago, and I'm the founder and host of the Social Work Podcast. Today, I'm going to talk to you about perhaps the most important thing you could ever do on Twitter. No, that's not true. But one of the most impressive things that you can do for your profession and for your career is to know how to live tweet an event. Where are you right now? That's right, you're sitting in a conference. Hi, Melanie. And you know what? You could be live tweeting out this event. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, it's because there's amazing content that's being shared in this conference. And you know who gets to hear about it? You, and like the 3 other people that are at this session. Just kidding, Melanie. I know it's scary when we're all like, fingers crossed. So, you are privy to some amazing, life-changing information, but everybody outside the conference is not. And so that's why you want to live tweet it. You want to get the information out there. So how do you do it? That's what I'm going to tell you. Quit bothering me. Let me start, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you know the official conference hashtag. What's a hashtag? It's what we used to call the pound sign. And it's that thing that Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake like to make fun of. So you use the conference hashtag to make sure that other people know how to find what you're tweeting. So then you get great content because you're sitting in these sessions and you're listening for the sound bites. You're like, what's the headline news from this session? And then you tweet it out. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a couple of people that you know that are also tweeting out the conference, you can create a social media team. Now, when you have a social media team, you want to make sure that you've got your phones all charged up, your laptops. You want to make sure you have Wi-Fi access. You want to bring your battery packs. You want to do all the things that the professionals do to make sure that you can have the access, the power, and the content to get it out there. The other thing you want to do is you want to organize. You want to make sure that not everybody is in Melanie's session, because if everybody's in Melanie's session and they're all tweeting out Melanie's content, then there's 17 sessions going on at the same time that nobody else is tweeting out, and that's a huge, huge shame. So you want to organize it. You also want to have a convention. How am I going to tweet this out and let everybody know what Melanie said versus what I said? I've got some tips on the Social Work Podcast website. If you go to Here's Tweeting At You is the name of the podcast episode. So once you've done all of this great tweeting, what you want to do is at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're archiving using Storify the tweets. And if you want a tutorial on Storify, just go to Laurel Hitchcock's amazing website, and you can find all the information you'd ever need to know about anything there, really anything. Just, I don't know why there's anything except that website. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so then the other thing you want to do, and actually you want to do this first, is you want to set up an analytics tool so that you can make sure that you identify the web metrics so that you know how to track the reach of your tweets. Now you can use Twitter analytics, but there are other tools called Hashtracker or Simpler. And these are great ways that you can make sure that you're getting information about how many people saw your tweets, who retweeted it, and all sorts of other crazy business. The things that if you happen to be involved with an organization, if you have an official Twitter profile, if you have a conference or an event, you need to be tweeting out. You need to be finding the best tweets from your conference that your attendees are tweeting out, and you need to be retweeting that shizzle. Because otherwise, it's going to look like everybody else is doing your work, and that's no good. Now, the last thing that you want to do when you're live tweeting is you want to add images. There's some research that said, images in tweets get retweeted a bunch more than just text-based images. So take pictures of yourself and of other people at conferences and then tweet that stuff out because people love pictures. And that's it. My name is Jonathan Singer. I hope you have enjoyed this brief tutorial on how to live tweet a conference. Back to you.
Lots of energy, fun, but still professional, right?
So some things that you're noticing about this is that there is that authenticity piece, right? You can be authentic and still professional. You can think about how you want to engage and still tell people something about who you are. And something about who Jonathan is recently tenured, and I think he's loosened way up since then. so it's fun to think about how we present ourselves and create our identities and how we develop networks. And you don't be overwhelmed with all the ideas that he has, because you can do a few of them or a lot of them. Good practice for using Twitter at conferences is to ask the presenter first if they're comfortable with you sharing some information about their research. I did this yesterday at a presentation. I said, I'm tweeting about this event, would like to share some of what you're doing. Would that be okay with you? Feel free to say no. And she said, yeah, but I've got some photos of kids from the reservation related to this intervention. Please don't take any slides with those photos on them. Great information for me, made her feel comfortable with what I was doing, and it can be kind of weird if you're not familiar with why somebody might be taking a picture of you when you're in the front of the room, right? And so people might say yes or no, and either is okay. But I like to think of this part as a dissemination tool. And also, sometimes being a scholar can be a little bit isolating, and part of this social networking, building community, is about being a little less isolated. So when I tweet at a conference, I'm always boosting a person's research, being a supportive colleague, saying what's great and interesting. I'm never going to tweet like she's talking about this, but her insize was 6. WTF, you know, I would never do that. So it's about having a supportive network and creating scholar partners around areas of your interest. So I mentioned earlier that if you want your profile to raise to the top, you have to think about the ranking of the pages. I talked about Rate My Professors as one of those high-ranking pages. So I'll tell you something I didn't know until I needed to know. I had an unfortunate incident where I was forced to give a student a B, and she was very unhappy about it. And she shared a lot of information on Rate My Professor about her unfair and unjust grade, and about how unfair it was, and so on. And I knew, 1, exactly who the student was because of the content, and 2, some of the information wasn't accurate. So I wondered what people do when this happens. Well, I found this one professor who says, well, hit the report button on that particular entry, and they just basically take it off. You say inaccurate information, and they remove that. You can do that. It's up to you about whether you want to remove those kinds of things or not. But it's easy to do if you decide that you want to control the content that's out there about you. And I think it's perfectly fair, especially in cases where it's inaccurate. I have one Rate My Professor review from when I was a new professor, and it says something like, oh, she knows what she's talking about, but she's not a good teacher, or something like that. And I said, it's a few years old, and reviews after that are a lot better, and I have gotten better, so whatever. And I left it there. In this particular instance, because the student shared some inaccurate things, and because she did it in a not so professional way, I actually, I had her into my office, and I talked about, you know, I knew this was you because of the circumstance, and we have some professional responsibilities as social workers about how we represent ourselves, about how we talk to colleagues when we have a problem, about how we solve problems, and how you do this right now. It has some similarities with how you do it as a social worker when you go out into practice, and I want you to think about that. And she said, it wasn't me. I said, okay, well, it looks like it was you, and if it wasn't you, I apologize greatly. I'm concerned that somebody would say these things, and if it wasn't you, I don't know who it was, so if I got that wrong, I'm very sorry. This is an opportunity anyway for us to think about how we communicate. There was also a string of emails with poor communication that led up to that. So she said, okay, and she left my office, and like an hour later that post was removed, and I have to assume that she went and removed it. Okay. So, students do better work for a public audience than they do when you're their only audience. If they're creating an infographic to share with the community or on behalf of an agency, they're going to produce better work. Research says this. Sometimes we assume students know how to use social media professionally just because they know how to use social media, and they don't. But you don't have to train students how to use every platform or how to understand Facebook versus Twitter profile. Teaching them values that are aligned with our code and our professional presentation that you already teach students about is more important than the actual platform. So there are tons of ways that you can do that. You can have students go create a LinkedIn account profile and then have them engage in a peer review. You can have them do something similar to the exercise that we did earlier today, where they search and think about what their online identities currently say about them. You can give them an assignment to explore the privacy controls for a selected social media site and talk about who owns the data in a reflection paper. You can say, you can give your students a scenario. Say, you have a client who has problems with hoarding and you need to refer them to a therapist. Go find a therapist for them, tell me who you're going to refer them to and why, and then have them reflect on who they chose and why and what tools they used to get there, and to help them think about where they got the information and what professional presentation looks like and why they choose one person over another. I have students in my children's mental health class create a 5-minute video of a brief intervention, like maybe it's about using guided relaxation with a young child having anxiety. So they talk about it briefly, talk about the evidence behind it, and I try to get them to actually demonstrate it really briefly. We put all these videos, 5-minute videos, on a blog. I run the blog, so I add each video to a blog. Every time I teach that class, I add more videos to the blog. So we have like 40 brief intervention videos on this blog, which is a resource to other students, to community members, maybe to parents, and I screen them to make sure that they're using evidence-based practice. They have to use a citation that links the theory to the practice exercise. You can have students select an audience, such as their future clients or professional peers or future employers, and write a reflection about what they want those people to know about them, and then have them choose a platform that makes sense to present themselves to that audience. Like if it was future employers, I'd say LinkedIn, and make sure that the things that they want to be reflected about them are built into that profile. I'll make all these slides available. I'll upload a link to them in the notes section of this BPE session, so you can think more about those.
So one of the things I really like about the idea of the settings assignment is a lot of times what I hear not clients, but students talk about is, well, if it's out there, then obviously they don't care if somebody sees it, right? It's public knowledge. They put it on a public site, and so if they really didn't want me to look at it, then they would have put their settings so that I couldn't have seen it. And when you actually start digging in to try to control your settings on some of these sites, you realize how difficult a task that can be. And we're asking a vulnerable population that may not have a high school degree, that may have some sort of disability, to be able to navigate those same sites that you, as an educated professional, struggle with navigation. And so it really puts it in a different mindset for them of like, wow, maybe they didn't want this to be public consumption, and I shouldn't be, using it the way I'm using it.
One of the things that we call field or signature pedagogy because students are out there practicing what they know, right? But by using public social media, you're having students perform for a public audience all the way to Todd does it from intro class. Who am I professionally and how do I engage with other people? It's basically supervised practice before they ever go into the field, right? So the earlier that you can get people engaged with their communities, get students prepared for who am I not only in the classroom, but when I go out into an agency, this all reflects on me from an early social work student. My identity is starting to form if I take it public. So I'll share a quick video tip from Natalie about how she does that with her students.
Hello, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm an assistant professor at Charleston State University in the social work department. Today I'm going to speak with you about how our department uses Google. We use Google to develop communities within our courses so that students can interact with one another. Also, we suggest Google communities to our students so that they can collaborate during team assignments. And then finally, we utilize Google Community as a department because social work has one department, however, it's being held or offered on 3 different campuses. Within our Google community, we use it to share pictures. Also, we use it to provide information about different events that we hold on campus. And finally, we use it so that we can share great news, excitement, we can sort of brag on our different campuses. Google Community has been an amazing platform for us to use at Charlton. It allows us the opportunity to have just one voice within our program or within our department. Overall, Google Community is exactly what we like.
Oh, we have another questions.
So, yep. So that's it. Those were our goals, and I hope that we've met them. We have a few minutes for questions, but we'll certainly stay around if you have any more.
Thoughts? Questions? Critiques?
I think your discussion of pre-tweeting and tweeting, I think that's now my concern a lot of times with me getting involved, is the time that it would take to be able to monitor and to do some of these things. The fact that you can do it at a time when it's convenient, I think I never do. It's just
Scheduling the tweets, yeah. And before we start tweeting around a class, there are always classroom discussions about what do you want out there, how do you want that to be associated with you, what are you sharing, how do you engage. So, and we tie that back to our social work values and ethics.
And I shared this morning about how you have more skills than you really think you have. One of the things I was really nervous about when I first started introducing social media into the classroom was, wow, these kids are, the generation that obviously they can out-tech me any day of the week, right? And that's not necessarily the truth because they don't know how to put that professional lens on the activity. And so this is our opportunity to step up and show them how to put that professional lens on the behavior that they're using. And I use a Twitter assignment in every class I teach. We're going to do some form of social media, whether we're going to be posting infographics to a blog, whether we're going to be tweeting once a week on something related to the course content, because we have to promote these behaviors. If we're not promoting these behaviors, then what happens is they're going to go out to the professional community, and what do they know? They know the personal practice. They don't know the professional practice. And so then they're going to incorporate their personal behaviors into the professional environment, and they're going to find themselves getting in trouble. And so I really view it as our role as educators to lead the way by showing them, hey, here's how you develop this professional behavior, your professional identity, and I'm going to give you the tools so that when you go out and you're looking for that job, you're not going to find yourself in these ethical dilemmas. You're not going to be worried about what your supervisor may find when they Google you, because you're going to be squared away because you've been practicing this for 4 years and you've gotten your education. So that's kind of my philosophy.
It stretches us. It stretches our students. Our students mostly have not recorded a professional video, but I've certainly had students graduate and email me and say, oh my gosh, my agency wants me to build a website for them, my little nonprofit, and I don't know what to do, and you know about some of this stuff, tell me. So if we can do that earlier in the curriculum and give them some of those transferable skills, break them out of that learning management system into places where they're going to have skills that they can take with them, they will. And you will too. I'm going to call Natalie out real quick. When I said, make this video, she said, I'm not sure, but I'm going to do it. And she did it, and she looked like a pro, right? She stretched herself to try something new. Are you going to do it again?
Yes.
Because it wasn't that hard, right? And now you can teach your students to do it, right? And they're going to have opportunities to share who they are. So
don't be afraid to fail. I mean, I remember the first time I did the Twitter assignment in my class, it failed. I made it too big, I made it too broad, I made it unmanageable, and I took the lessons away from it, recrafted it. Next semester, we did it again. And so now I have it crafted to a way that I know it'll work. And so, but you have to be able to put your toe in the water and just jump in, because it's probably not going to work the way you envisioned it the first time, but that's okay, right? Because we're human, and our students have to be able to see the human side of us as well.
And we all tweak our assignments as we go, and they get better.
Absolutely.
So we share our content. We do this because we want social workers to get better at this stuff. Feel free to use what we've got. If you email us, we'll answer your questions. We're happy to have you here. Please keep in touch, and we'll see you.
Thank you
so
for
much.
playing along with us and being great. Appreciate it.
If there are any other questions, we're happy to stick around for a few minutes.
Yeah,